Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Everything we thought we knew about 3I Atlas just got thrown out the window. Brand new images captured on November 11th, 2025 have just arrived, and they reveal something that has scientists absolutely stunned. This object, this mysterious visitor from interstellar space, remains completely intact. No fragmentation, no breakup. Still a single body, despite passing within spitting distance of the sun just 2 weeks earlier. And that changes absolutely everything. These last-minute observations were captured by David Jewett and Jane Liu using the Nordic Optical Telescope at La Palma in the Canary Islands. It's a serious piece of equipment, with a primary mirror measuring 2.56 meters in diameter. And what it photographed is shaking the foundations of what we understand about comets. Because Avi Loeb just published a devastating analysis of these observations on his blog, and his calculations don't just challenge conventional explanations, they completely destroy them. The numbers he's presenting make it impossible to explain 3I Atlas as a normal comet. We're talking about energy requirements, mass ejection rates, and physical dimensions that simply don't add up. And the implications of what these images are showing us could fundamentally change our understanding of what's actually visiting our solar system right now. So buckle up, because what you're about to hear is going to make you question everything you thought you knew about this interstellar visitor. Before we dive deeper into this story, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next video. Alright, back to it. So what exactly are these new images showing us? The glow surrounding 3I Atlas displays something called prominent elongation, and it's projecting to a position angle of 106 degrees. That's remarkably close to the projected sunward direction of 115 degrees. Now, if you've been following this story, you'll remember that the Hubble Space Telescope captured similar imagery back on July 21st, 2025. That earlier observation already showed an anti-tail pointing toward the sun, which is something that shouldn't exist according to normal solar wind physics. Material should be pushed away from the sun, not toward it. But here we are, months later, and the new images are confirming the same bizarre feature. There's more though. The new image also reveals a weaker asymmetry at an angle of 301 degrees, which sits close to the projected anti-solar direction of 295 degrees. So we've got material being pushed in both directions, creating these unusual patterns that don't match what we'd expect from a standard comet. At the time these observations were made, 3I Atlas was positioned 1.43 astronomical units from the Sun and 2.16 astronomical units from Earth. To give you a sense of scale here, the image region they captured spans approximately 500,000 kilometers wide. That's an enormous area, and within that frame, they're seeing structures and features that are making astronomers rethink everything. The long-range jet structures that other telescopes have captured in recent wide-field images aren't visible in this particular data, and Loeb explains that's probably because these observations were taken through a specific filter that excluded most of the gaseous emission lines from the jets. But what is visible is raising questions that conventional comet science simply cannot answer. Here's where things get absolutely mind-blowing. Loeb looked at these images showing 3I Atlas as a single intact body, and he writes something profound given the large-scale jets reported recently. The fact that this object remains as a single body is profoundly surprising for a natural comet. Let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking about a small discrepancy here. Large-scale images of 3I Atlas have shown jets extending approximately 1 million kilometers toward the sun. 1 million kilometers of material being pushed sunward. And in the opposite direction, there's an even more impressive jet stretching 3 million kilometers. These are distances that dwarf anything we've seen from normal cometary activity. Now, for a natural comet, Loeb explains that the outflow velocity of these jets would be about 0.4 kilometers per second. That's roughly on the order of the sound speed of gas at 3I Atlas's distance from the sun. Standard physics. Nothing unusual about that velocity itself. But here's the problem: at that speed, for jets to reach the distances that have been photographed, they would have to persist for a period of 1 to 3 months. Sustained ejection of material over weeks and months, maintaining these million-kilometer-plus structures. The jets toward the sun were stopped by solar wind at that 1 million-kilometer mark, and Loeb calculated the mass density at that distance. We're talking about a few million proton masses per cubic centimeter. When you multiply that mass density by the outflow speed, you get something absolutely staggering, a colossal mass flux of 5 billion tons per month per area of 1 million kilometers on a side. 5 billion tons. Every month. And this is where Loeb's analysis becomes devastating. Because now we need to talk about energy, and this is where the entire natural comet explanation collapses under its own weight. The sublimation of carbon dioxide ice requires an energy of 600 joules per gram. To sublimate approximately 5 billion tons of CO2 during the 1-month perihelion passage period, 3I Atlas would have had to receive at least 3 times 10 to the 18th power joules of energy. That's 3 followed by 18 zeros. An incomprehensible amount of energy. Now, at its perihelion distance, the Sun was providing 700 joules per square meter per second to the object. That's the available energy input. So Loeb did the math to absorb all the energy needed to produce the observed mass loss. 3I Atlas would require an absorbing area larger than 1,600 square kilometers. That's equivalent to the area of a sphere with a diameter of 23 kilometers. But here's the crushing blow. The Hubble Space Telescope estimated the maximum diameter of 3I Atlas at just 5.6 kilometers. The object would need to be 4 times larger than what we're actually observing to make the physics work. And if we're talking about water ice instead of carbon dioxide, the required diameter jumps to an absolutely incredible 51 kilometers. Loeb then points out something crucial that makes these numbers even more impossible. On natural cometary nuclei, the pockets of ice often cover only a small fraction of the total surface. It's not like the entire object is pure ice, sitting there sublimating uniformly. Which means the numbers he's calculated are completely untenable for 3I Atlas as a single body that maintained its integrity and didn't break up into numerous fragments. In simple terms, a natural comet cannot produce this amount of ejected material while remaining intact at the observed size. The math doesn't work. The physics doesn't work. Nothing about this fits. And this is where Avi Loeb goes straight for the throat with a critique that should make everyone in the scientific community sit up and pay attention. He writes that this raises a new anomaly of 3I Atlas that must be explained by those who wish to shove the anomalies of 3I Atlas under the carpet of traditional knowledge on solar system comets rather than consider alternatives. That's not subtle language. He's directly calling out the tendency to force observations into comfortable explanations instead of following the data where it actually leads. Then he quotes Albert Einstein, and this quote hits differently in this context. Knowledge is realizing that the street is one way. Wisdom is looking in both directions. As Loeb makes crystal clear, there's a fundamental new anomaly here that needs to be explained. We've got an object that remained intact through its closest approach to the Sun, yet somehow produced mass ejection rates that would require it to be 4 to 9 times larger than what telescopes are actually observing. We've got jets extending millions of kilometers in organized patterns. We've got anti-tail formations pointing toward the Sun, when physics says material should be pushed away. And we've got energy requirements that cannot be satisfied by the object's actual size and surface area. Every conventional explanation is breaking down under scrutiny. Maybe, as Einstein suggested, and Loeb is implying, it's time to look both ways down the street. It's time to consider that our traditional knowledge about solar system comets might not apply to whatever 3I Atlas actually is. The data is screaming at us that something fundamental doesn't fit. The question is whether we're willing to listen, or whether we'll keep trying to force this square peg into a round hole until the observations fade and the object disappears beyond detection range. Because that window is closing fast, and once it's gone, we'll never get another chance to figure out what really just passed through our solar system.